The morning boxing news centres on the WBC heavyweight fight in Munich. Britain's Derek Chisora lost a unanimous points decision to Vitaly Klitschko. Afterwards, though, Chisora was involved in a brawl at the after-fight press conference with Britain's former champion David Haye. In the melee that followed, Haye's trainer suffered facial cuts, and Chisora accused Haye of attacking him with a bottle. Well, Frank Warren is Chisora's manager. He was involved in the promotion, and I spoke to him a short time ago.
There was just a massive scuffle and whatever. And it's very difficult to see from where I was sitting, but I've seen all the video footage because obviously afterwards the police were called and the police showed us some of the footage that they had.
What did you actually see in that video footage? What did it reveal?
It reveals, you see Derek actually, I think he was trying to say something or whatever, and then the two of them sort of got close to each other, and then it was then there was just a big kerfuffle. Derek says he was hit with a bottle. He had a cut mouth. He said he was hit with a bottle.
And he alleged that Haye hit him with a bottle.
Well, I'll leave him to say what he's got to say about that. But he said he was hit with a bottle, and it just spread. I think his manager Adam Booth got an injury to his head, and I think that was caused by actually one of their own party, by obviously by mistake. And it basically just it stopped. The security people stopped it.
Did you actually see Chisora and Haye exchange punches?
No, but they did wind up on the floor together. But there's a lot of amateur video footage, and I think that will all come out in due course, which will with the telephones, things and so forth, and one of the TV cameras. And I think at the end of the day, that will, if there's any action taken, which I'm sure there will be, then that will be used as evidence. Is
this the worst scenes you've ever seen between two boxers outside a ring? I recall vividly being there when Lewis and Tyson squared up to one another, and years ago Mark Kaler and Errol Christie. Yeah. Is this the worst you've ever seen?
It's the worst I've been, because I was actually there. I wasn't there for the Mike Tyson thing, nor was I there for the Christie and Kaler. But it's unacceptable. It's stupid. It doesn't do anybody, sport, boxing, whatever it is, anybody any favours, and it's just ridiculous. Unfortunately with Derek, there was a lot of controversy leading up to the fight, but in the fight I thought he really boxed well. He went in there as an underdog, and I think he came out of the fight with a lot of credit. And I think that his moment was ruined in the after-fight press conference. I mean, I think David should better off let Derek have had his moment rather than gate crash the press conference and do what he did.
Could it be seen as one of those things where the two boxers are thinking that they might meet down the road, and this of course is early publicity?
That sounds like it's staged and whatever. It was not that. It was the heat. It was a very charged atmosphere, and it just got out of hand. There's none of that. I mean, that's what some people I'm sure would like to believe. That certainly was not the case. And as I say, it takes away from which on the night was a really gallant performance from Derek Chisora in the ring.
We're about to speak to the Boxing Board of Control. What action would you like them to take against the two
they'll obviously
boxers?
There's a lot of things happening regarding the Boxing Board of Control. First of all, they'll have a hearing. David Haye isn't licensed, so I believe. I don't believe he's actually got a boxing licence at the moment. I'm not sure about that, but if he hasn't, then there's nothing they can do. They will obviously have their own investigation. And then they'll decide whether they're going to call. I'm sure they'll call people, and I'm sure that something will be done. But it was just really, really something that we could certainly do with that in boxing. It was just awful, and I'm sure that the board will take the appropriate action to deal with it.
And Derek Chisora should be suspended and received a big fine. And if Haye does have a licence, and we will establish that in due course,
that's up to the Board of Control.
What would you like to see happen, though, Frank?
What I would like to see, I'd like to see a proper inquiry. And I'd like to see people with cool and calm, collected heads to look at the video evidence and then make their decision on what they feel happened.
Yes, it was disgraceful. Having spent your life in boxing, surely Chisora would deserve a long suspension for this, wouldn't he?
Gary, I've just said to you what my answer is. I've told you it's disgusting. I can't use.
And you would also have an idea on the punishment that they would like to see.
I would have an idea on a punishment.
Yes, and what should it be?
Well, what punishment can they give them? They can either give. There's only one of them, I believe, is licensed, and if the person who had the licence, i.e. Derek Chisora, was found guilty of misconduct, then they have a process to go through, and they have a method whether they want to suspend, fine, or whatever. But first of all, you have to look at the evidence, and the police over here don't mess around. So maybe you should put a call into them and ask them what their views are, because they've seen far more video footage of what's happened. They've had more evidence given to them than the British Boxing Board of Control myself.
Frank Warren, thank you very much for coming on the programme.
Thank you.
We can speak now to Robert Smith, General Secretary of the Boxing Board of Control. Robert, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What's your reaction to what's happened?
Well, extremely disappointed and disgusted, really. I've seen didn't watch the contest at a family event last night, but I've obviously seen footage this morning, and it doesn't do the sport any good. In fact, it doesn't do Britain any good, unfortunately. It's a bit like Brits abroad, and I am very disappointed.
And tell me what you actually saw in the footage. A lot of people are waking up to this story. What did you see, and what is your most vivid memory from the images that you've seen?
Well, obviously a melee took place, and physical contact took place, and really, until we look at it properly, I would not say too much more, but it's not acceptable, and as I say, very disappointed.
Chisora alleged, and I stress alleged, that Haye attacked him with a bottle, which seems extraordinary. If it's true.
If it's true, alleged and what happened is two different things. So the first thing we need to do is find out the facts, and obviously tomorrow I'll be contacting the German authorities, the German Boxing Federation, and I presume now the German police, etc., to waiting for their reports, and we'll take it from there. But at the moment, I can't say too much more, because obviously it's very early days.
Yes, I mean, also in that interview with Frank Warren, he said that the police have said, having studied the footage, that they are not going to take any action, and that Chisora would be catching a plane home at 11 o'clock this morning. So the police at this stage not taking any action.
Fair enough, but we can still ask for reports exactly what happened. They were there, they were called. We can still ask for the information they have. We'll obviously look at the footage again, and we'll take it from there. But just because they're not taking any further action doesn't mean that we can't take any action if we need to.
No, absolutely. Does David Haye have a licence at the moment? Could you update us on that, Robert?
No, he doesn't. He's in the process. I've spoken to his manager, Adam Booth, on a regular basis with regard to reapplying for his licence, but as we stand here today, he hasn't got a licence.
No. If he came to you tomorrow and said, I want to fight in, say, 3 months' time, I want my licence back today, for the time being, would you say, no, you're not going to have the licence, in view of what happened yesterday? We
would have to go through the normal process and obviously deal with any outstanding matter. And I would have thought that yesterday's activities would obviously have to be considered, yes.
Yes, so in other words, what you're saying, the interpretation of what you've said is, if he knocked on your door and said, tomorrow, can I have a licence, you would say no.
I didn't say that.
No, but please tell me, Robert. Don't beat about the bush. We've had lots of Robert, let me finish. We've had lots of texts and emails to 5 Live this morning saying that the boxers should be suspended. It's disgusting. You've said it's disgusting. All I'm really asking you, if he comes to you tomorrow and says, I want my licence back, wouldn't it make sense for the integrity of the sport to say no for the time being, rather than say we've got to study the video pictures?
First of all, we'd have to listen to what David Haye has to say. And obviously we haven't done that yet. And then if he does apply for his licence, we'll consider all the facts. Now, that doesn't mean any person who actually writes us a letter or rings us up saying I want a licence back doesn't mean they get a licence back straight away. We're not just David Haye, this is anybody. So we have to look at the whole situation. But he hasn't done himself any good, and neither has Mr. Chisora, I have to say that.
No, and Chisora does have a licence, and bearing in mind that at the weigh-in, he slapped Klitschko around the face. I mean, it's just pathetic, isn't it?
I mean, again, yes. I mean, as an ex-professional boxer myself, total disrespect of your opponent is not acceptable, and we would have dealt with that anyway. This is another matter now. So we have two situations with Mr. Chisora, and we'll have to look at it accordingly.
Yes. And Robert, as you say, you spent a lifetime in the sport. Where would you put this particular incident? Because I remember going to the press conference in the very early 80s when Kayla and Christie squared up to one another, and being in New York for Tyson and Lewis when they had a brawl. Where would you put this particular incident of seemingly terrible things happening in boxing? Where is it?
Pretty high up, to be honest with you, but it's not new. But there's no excuse. I mean, I remember as a young boy watching Ali and Fraser brawling around in a TV studio. Then, as you're quite right with regard to Christie and Kayla, And, this is just not good for the sport. And for any sport, it has to deal with this. And it's extremely, you wake up in the morning, somebody's just fought for the World Heavyweight Championship, which is the highest thing they can do, and you're dealing with something. We're not even talking about the contest. We're talking about something else, and that really is disappointing.
Robert, I appreciate you coming on this morning. Thank you very much.
No problem. Bye now.
Robert Smith, General Secretary of the Boxing Board of Control.
Well, I thought it was very interesting, the one thing he did say, and you always get the impression when administrators are talking that there's a lawyer sort of somewhere in the background, but it's interesting what he did say is that yesterday's activities will have to be considered if Haye goes back to him and asks for a licence, but I would have thought it's a fairly straightforward misconduct charge to Chisora. You understand they have to promote fights, future fights or discuss or previous fights, but they walk a very fine line between promoting something and turning the sport into something toxic, and I think that's what happened last night.